And there's this new NBC poll that shows young men generally more favorably disposed towards Donald Trump and his policies than young women. And I want to talk about kind of the intersection of those two. How are you feeling about the economy, and what are you hearing from the young people you talk to about how they're feeling about it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I mean, our campus tour is about to kick off in a couple days, so I'll have a better answer for you in the coming weeks. I mean, look, the president knows this, that he still has a lot of work to do with young people. I think that we're in a much better spot than we were a year ago. I could tell you, Mark, undoubtedly, talking to CEOs, businessmen, investors, and even international folks, the psychology of the American economy is far better. And so much of what happens in business is just psychology. Do you think we're doing better? Do you think that this is a better pro-business environment? I actually haven't had a chance to dive into those economic numbers. I was, as you know, traveling, so I'm going to have to do that. I was told that they weren't as good as they could have been, but I'm not going to be able to comment on that. I will say, though, that there are a couple fundamental problems that I know the president wants to solve, and I think he has to solve. Homeownership for young people is number one, cost of living, and then also just restoring this idea of the American way of life, which is fundamentally meritocratic, which is that if I work hard and play by the rules, I can materially and financially and socially ascend in this country. What we are seeing happen is more and more political and economic nihilism. I think we're going to be able to cut that off at the pass, but it is a race against the clock. And I've said this publicly, is that you have kind of two competing economic visions, of which I think the Democrat Party, they're going to stumble upon themselves, but they're eventually going to end up in this mold. And you and I have talked about this before on my podcast, Mark, which is you have MAGA, pretty clear what we believe, right? We believe in America First agenda, but we're generally, fair. We believe in markets with proper restraints, and we like entrepreneurship, private property rights. On the other side, you have Mamdani, and you have this idea of mass economic restructuring, kind of bitter resentment, and he is kind of a, more polished version on a city level of confiscatory economic policy. It's very alluring. It's very attractive, especially to a generation that owns nothing, that is renting endlessly. And so all this to say, Mark, that there's going to be kind of a fork in the road politically and philosophically over the next couple of years. So I'll have a better idea of where young people are feeling in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. But there's definitely more work to do. But I think the president's successes so far have been notable. We are seeing housing prices go down finally in the Sun Belt. That data came out the last couple of days. We're starting to see housing go down a little bit. But the biggest thing is going to be, can we grow the economy for young people in particular, not just for late Gen Xers and baby boomers. So I have a lot more to say on that. As you know, I've been pretty non-political on this, saying that this is an issue that transcends political lines, and it's of civilizational import.
Right. Should young people look to Washington, to look to the Trump administration to help the economy, or should they just be thinking about the private sector?
I mean, both. I think that, look, I think the One Big Beautiful Bill has some very compelling provisions that are going to help young people. But I say this regardless if it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or Donald Trump in the White House. You should always be looking towards your own agency for your own success, right? Meaning that it's your own capacity to save, it's your own capacity to invest and to see a better future, not a politician, regardless of who's in there. But I think that we're going to see a major economic boom at some time during this presidency. I think there's a pent-up need and desire for this. And as bad as people want to say the economy, we are so much better than our peers and our competitors. We are seeing, and we're going to see trillions of dollars of capital invested in this country. And look, also the other component of this, though, is that we are trying to reverse a couple years of massive deficit spending, of unnecessary inflation, and trying to get back towards a private sector economic growth model. So, but my number one thing that I'm looking at is, can we increase the amount of home ownership for young people in America? It's the number one thing that I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, and the president and the Treasury Secretary are concerned about it and are talking about it. Do you have any thoughts on what they might do or what they should do to deal with home ownership?
Well, I think deportations help because you're limiting the supply of people that will potentially be able to go into housing. I also think that you need to build more homes. So there's a little bit of debate amongst this, which is, will lowering interest rates actually lower housing prices? you could look at it either way. So interest rates will probably release a lot of buyers, and that will increase housing prices. However, developers, especially mass developers that are developing thousands of homes, are almost always borrowing. I mean, they're not putting up all their money in as equity. So lower interest rates will probably increase the supply longer term. I am willing to endorse some radical ideas going to as far as, is it time for a new social compact, piece of legislation, the same way that we did this for veterans after World War II, because this generation has been so battered, treated so terribly when it comes to economics. Everything is more expensive. Everything is out of reach. First-time home buyer 10 years ago was 30. Now it's 39. We have more baby boomers than Gen Zers buying homes. I can go through all the numbers. They're not great. And it's not President Trump's fault. A lot of this is an inherited economic multi-decade problem that is just culminating right now. So generally, I have the position that we need pro-free market, pro-freedom solutions towards this. But the other thing is this. I had a private conversation with someone that you would know and that you would recognize, but I won't say his name, multi-billionaire guy who's like, but Charlie, we should just change the philosophy towards a nation of renters. It's better for them. You can move easier. I reject that wholeheartedly. That is a fight that I think is coming, Mark, is that some people on the right are just going to propagandize this, tell us, well, it's the same if you rent as you own. I completely disagree. I think ownership is good for the individual. I think it's good for society. I think it's good for the community. I think it's good for your family. I think it's good to be able to say, I own something. You can't take it away from me. So anyway, that's another, I think, philosophical fight that's going to happen mostly amongst the right. Yeah.
You know what that story illustrates is you and I know a lot of billionaires. Some of them aren't that bright. I don't know how they got so rich because they're not that bright.
I mean, look,
we know a lot of bright ones too, but
yeah, I will say though that if you've made money yourself as a billionaire, you're probably good. You're probably amazing at one or two things. That does not mean you're good
but not everything. Yeah.
That's one of the lessons that I've learned being around America's ruling class. So.
Yeah. I mean, well, someday I want to do a whole show with you about billionaires, but not today. This NBC poll. Okay, good. I realized the other day, I know almost 10% of America's billionaires.
That's
feel blessed
crazy.
Professionally to have had that opportunity.
That's
you probably
amazing.
know more than I do. You probably know 20%.
Well, I don't
There's
know
like 1,100. There's like 1,100. It's like 1,100, and I know like 100 and something of them. I mean, I've met them, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Probably some overlap on our list. Listen up now. If you're 64 years or older, this is important. The Department of Justice recently sued 3 major Medicare brokers for claiming they were unbiased while allegedly pushing people into plans that got them the biggest kickbacks. It's true. So many insurance agents just can't be trusted. But you can't necessarily rely on government resources either. That's why I want you to know about something called Chapter. Chapter was started by people who went through this personally themselves after their own parents were pushed into the wrong Medicare plan by an agent more focused on commissions than on care. Chapter's mission is very simple: to give every American the honest, straightforward Medicare advice they deserve. And here's what makes them different. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan across the country, not just a handful. That saves their clients an average of $1,100 per year. There's no reason not to call. It's quick, it's easy, and they can review your options in under 20 minutes. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you that. But if there's a better plan, they'll help you switch. This could be the most important call you make this year. Dial pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare to get peace of mind. Again, that's pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare.